Better World Blueprint. Good humans doing good things.
I'm Siobhan Hunt. I chat to people who are making this world a better place. It makes me feel good about the world, and I hope it makes you feel the same thing. A little bit of hope when sometimes it feels like there isn't much around. This is A Better World Blueprint. Rebekah Robertson is an actor and author of the book About a Girl who founded Transcend, an organisation supporting the families of transgender kids. Her activism stemmed from a simple place, the love for her transgender daughter Georgie. But supporting her daughter and helping her to navigate the world was not so simple. There has been intrusive public scrutiny, adults behaving badly, and a challenging court system. When Georgie was 10, she and her family went to court to challenge the laws around when gender-diverse children can access puberty blockers. Previous to this challenge, transgender children and their families had to apply to the family court for access to this first stage of gender affirmation, a process that was extremely distressing for those children. This is my chat with the fierce and powerful Rebekah Robertson. Hello, Rebekah. How are you?
Hi, Siobhan. I'm well.
What led you to start this foundation, Transcend? What was your wake-up moment?
I had a trans daughter and there was no information or assistance for kids like Georgie or for families like mine at that point in time. We're going back now to around about 2006, 2007 when I first started looking for help, and it was a desert. So it wasn't until about 2012 that I decided that I was going to just try and make connections. And I have to say that at the beginning, there wasn't a plan to become a charity or a plan to become an organisation. There was a desperate need to connect with other parents. And ironic for me because I wasn't a parent group kind of a person.
As you mentioned there, it wasn't a long-term plan to start this organisation, but I guess how did you get there? Like how did you started making those connections with other parents on Facebook groups, and was there a time in that process where you stopped and went, do you know what? We need a foundation. We need something that's structured. We need something more solid than these parents groups, and I'm the person to do it.
For me, my main priority through all of those years was being a mum to Georgie and Harry and working. So I just did what I could do within my capacity at the time. When Georgie was about 10 to when she was almost 16, we had to go through several court cases to access the appropriate treatment for her. There was no room for thinking about formalising an organisation.
Was becoming an advocate for families and children a choice, or did it just happen because you were articulate, you knew the issues, and you were also trying to navigate a very adversarial process to get help for your daughter?
I think all of the above, actually. But the one thing that stood out in terms of us saying that we were going to come forward and talk about things was that we'd had some success in challenging the law around access to gender-affirming care. And there was nobody else aside from Georgie who had leave from the court to talk about her experiences publicly. So when we had gone back to court when she was 15, we had asked leave of the judge to allow her to identify herself in whatever way she saw fit. And normally children are not allowed to be identified in cases that go through the family court, and all of the cases around trans kids in the courts were anonymised. And we would have been in contempt of court had we spoken about it publicly without that order. So Georgie was the only one who had actually been through it who could talk about it publicly. And because she had felt so silenced throughout the whole process, she really wanted to talk about it. And she didn't want other kids to have to go through what she had gone through. And, before that, I had been advocating, but I'd been doing it quietly behind the scenes and nobody knew my name because, Georgie wasn't out for a long time. So when she came out to her friends at school, that was it. I think it was the responsibility of knowing that we were in a unique position. And Georgie would say that she didn't have a choice.
Yeah. How did that make you feel as a parent? Because being 15 is hard enough for both the child and the parent, regardless of what's happening around and outside of that relationship. That's a challenging time of life. But then you're also coming together to advocate, to help people. I mean, it's so beautiful on one level, but so heartbreaking on another. Like as a mother, I can't imagine how hard that was. I mean, you must have been very proud of Georgie, but also wishing she didn't have to do it.
Of course. Very proud of her and hugely protective. Hugely protective.
Which is tough because Georgie is also an actor and she's got a public...
Well, she wasn't then. She wasn't then.
But you've got a child who's stepping out into the public space, into a conversation you already know is full of awful people saying awful things that you can't stop. How did you get your head around that? Because obviously once Georgie decided to speak, you're like, well, I'm side by side. We're together in this. Was that how you framed it? Was that how you got through knowing what was possibly going to come at Georgie once she started speaking publicly?
Yes. I don't think you're ever comfortable with that. Never. How could you be? And how could you ever expect another person, and especially a young person, to develop a thick skin around that? I mean, it's insane. Why should anyone have to develop a thick skin around public bullying, public shaming, public humiliation, attacks on character, threats? I mean, that's just crazy. How could anyone ever expect that of another person? The most courageous people I know are trans people, trans and gender diverse people. And I can't tell you how courageous it is for a young kid to walk into school every morning and show up as themselves. I really wish that more people had the courage of a trans child.
One of my questions is, while you were doing this work and trying to make a difference, trying to make this world better for trans kids in particular, did you ever stumble? When I ask that question now, I feel like it's just a whole complete stumble the whole way, because you've got so many obstacles in your path to getting there. I mean, is that how it felt? Did it always feel like you were swimming upstream?
Yes. And in my worst times, I would wake up every morning and feel like I was failing. Every day presented ways to stumble. And look, I have to admit that there were days where I just didn't think I could keep going. I'm not dramatizing this. I spoke to other people who were in similar positions, were doing the same work or doing similar work in a different area. And we talk about that feeling of just going, I don't think I can do another day of this. But then you'd speak to a beautiful parent and you were their first contact after their kid had come out to them, or they'd decided that they needed to support their child. And it would just absolutely fill you with so much joy to know that there was another kid in the world who was being protected and being respected. And regardless of what trajectory that child was going to go on, and where they ended up in terms of their gender identity was much less important than the fact that their parent or their parents were holding them.
Mm. And is that what allowed you to keep going? Was it those moments?
It was sometimes the only thing.
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
sometimes the only thing. Aside from my drive to make Georgie's life better and easier and the world less hard for her, I didn't want parents to feel as alone as I did, and Georgie didn't want kids to feel as alone as she did. So we just kind of pressed on. Nobody lets you off the ride.
Yeah. Well, you're a parent. It doesn't end.
No.
Well, I mean, it's true to say that, but you also were both doing something that was hard as it was, that was absolutely making a difference. And I'm wondering if the work that you've done has changed you, and if it has, in what ways?
So many ways. Some good, some not so good. The good ways is that I have so much regard for trans and gender diverse people. I have learned so much. They've been a community who's been incredibly generous to me. It's been the privilege of my life to get to know families and get to know young people and to support Georgie and Harry, my kids. That side of it's been very good. I've learnt a lot about organisations, about dynamics, about how my privilege has protected me in many ways from the experiences that other people have had. But I've also learned about lateral hostility. I've learned about the outer reaches of my own capacity. And I've learned where my boundaries are. And I've learned that acceptance is a freedom like no other. And I've also learned that some people just aren't going to come on the journey with you. They're not. It doesn't matter how much good information you give them. It doesn't matter what the evidence is. It doesn't matter whether you try and reach out or don't try and reach out. There is nothing that you can do that is going to be evidence enough or reason enough to come on that journey with you. And that's sad, but you can't keep giving your energy to those people.
That's part of that acceptance that you spoke about, right? It's accepting what you can change and having no responsibility for what you can't, because
That's right.
what can you do about it?
No.
You've mentioned a few experiences throughout this chat. You talked about talking to parents and feeling, wow, I managed, this conversation is going to make a difference in that child's life. But was there anything across the years that you remember being something where it just sort of stopped you in your tracks and went, this work is making a difference?
Every now and again, I will get a message from a parent, and sometimes even from a young person on my socials or something. And they will just say thank you for removing the legal obstacles for them. And look, Georgie and I and our family, we became one of many who did that work, but we were the first to fight it. So it's nice to get families reaching out to you and saying, my kid started blockers today, and I was thinking about you and I was thinking about Georgie. And I just want to thank you so much that we didn't have to go through what Georgie went through to have this treatment. That's why we did it. That's what we hoped would be the outcome, because it wasn't going to change anything for Georgie. She had to go through the process that she had to go through, but it was going to change things for other people. The pleasure is in those texts, those messages.
Thank you so much for taking this time to talk about all of the wonderful things that you've done.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for asking me.
Rebekah Robertson, actor, founder of Transcend, and author of About a Girl. Such a challenging path to tread, and yet what a difference Rebekah has made in the world. Rebekah has stepped back from being so intensely involved in Transcend and has many other projects on the boil. To read more about the inspirations that drive her, check out the links in the episode notes. We're not always taught how to process loss, but next time on A Better World Blueprint, we're talking to someone who's trying to change that.
What we're doing at Good Grief is so personal. Like, we want to see 1 million women process grief and find inner peace and then purpose again after that.
That's Ryan Bowles, co-host with his wife, Callie, of the podcast and website Good Grief. He'll be chatting about what led them both to be so focused on helping women in particular process their grief. Sadness and loss are such tricky things to navigate as humans, and Callie and Ryan are committed to making big changes. If that interests you, come back for the next episode of A Better World Blueprint. I'm Siobhan Hunt. See you then.